Hello, everybody. It is a witchy reunion today with all of our co-hosts from the past and present and future. And we're here to talk about the cult musical classic Hocus Pocus. I'm so excited because it's just a magical witchy reunion. So let's go around and introduce ourselves and talk about our connection to Hocus Pocus.
Are you going to call on us?
Yeah, I was gonna say, is there an order?
I'll go. Hi. I'm used to work and then being like, yes. And now my dogs are going to argue, so somebody else has to go.
I can jump
Okay,
on and introduce myself if
good.
you. Hello everyone. I'm Jamie Starling. I am a shadowcaster and a burlesque performer, based in Pittsburgh. And those the JCCP. I'm with the Rocky Horror Shadowcast of Pittsburgh, the Junior Chamber of Commerce Players. I had first watched Hocus Pocus when I was, I think, in middle school or high school. I think there was like it might have been part of a Disney like my dad was scrolling through TV Guide and he saw that Disney Channel was playing Hocus Pocus or something. And he was called us to go watch it with him because he's like, we were like, can we watch something else? And he was like, no, you are sitting down and you are watching Hocus Pocus with me for Halloween. So I remember enjoying it at the time. I had a reaction to it very similar to The Kid and Princess Bride, where I was like, oh my God, what is this? This is a kid's movie. Very and then suddenly I ended up being emotionally invested, very much like The Kid and Princess Bride. So my dad convinced me, and by convincing me, and forced me to watch it. And I enjoyed it a lot. But my connection with it really grew when I was in college because my local gay bar would always have the Sanderson sisters as drag queens on Halloween. So I went to my very first like gay Christmas party basically every year when I was in my college years. And seeing my friends, the drag queens dressed up like the Sanderson sisters, it gave me a whole new appreciation for the film. And I got me to watch it again after a few years of not doing that. And now I do it whenever I can for Halloween. So long-winded story, I know, but there's a lot of feelings associated with this movie.
And on to the Sanderson sisters themselves.
Hello. Sorry, I'm not going to talk like that the whole time. I'm Hades, or formally Hades Nuts. Find us on Instagram, all of us.
Yes, I'm Mary Puffins. And I'm Randy Riot.
We're part of the Ordinary Kids Shadowcast group, located in New Jersey. And it's really funny. I'm dressed as Winifred, but I only recently in my like late 20s, early 30s got into Hocus Pocus. It was just off my radar for a very long time.
I think I remember seeing it on the Disney Channel. So I'm gonna age myself. I saw it in the movie theaters when it came out. My mom took me. We had a little mommy-daughter date night. I was very young at the time, and we saw it in the movie theaters. And then once it came on VHS, I had the VHS copy of it, and I used to watch it all the time until it broke. And I've been hooked on it ever since I was a little kid. I'm obsessed with this movie. I love everything about it.
Oh my God, I love it. I love it so much. I love it. And I started giggling because Jamie was talking about their local pub used to have drag queens that dress like the Sanderson sisters, and it cut to you three, and it looks like you're in a pub. It's like,
Just her living quarters in my basement.
surprise, we actually have those three drag queens with us tonight. It's a reunion. Ashley?
If the beasts will be quiet. I'm Ashley. I am not a part of any Rocky Horror, but I do travel around the country, seeing it in different states. This month I'm going to Kansas state, not city. And that will be my 44th state. And I've also been to London to the castle. So I saw Hocus Pocus. It was either in the theater or shortly after, like it came on like Disney Channel back before it was like this Disney Channel. and we were real poor. So it was a free trial, try out Disney. So of course we were all watching it. And I want to say third grade. And I remember being like, Dad, what's a virgin? And that's how I got my sex talk as a kid. So thanks, Bette Midler.
And last but not least, our very special guest. Will you please introduce yourself and talk about your connection with Hocus Pocus?
Hi, everyone. Hi, everybody. I am Allie, and I am Hocus Pocus Collector on Instagram, and I also co-host the Black Flame Society podcast. I have a photo of me watching Hocus Pocus when I was somewhere between 2 and 4 years old, and I believe that was one of the first times I saw it. One of the first times I remember seeing it, I was probably around 8 years old, and I just fell in love with Winifred. I wanted her to be like my crazy, spooky aunt who hopefully didn't eat me. And over the years, as everyone I can agree with, we kind of all just fell in love with it. It became the cult classic that it is today, and seeing its journey to getting a sequel and where it is now is just wild. So I'm really excited to talk with all of you tonight.
And y'all, you and the co-host of the Black Flame podcast, didn't y'all go to the premiere of Hocus Pocus 2? If I could be making that up.
Yes, we were invited by Disney to go to the premiere, which was an insane experience. Definitely once in a lifetime.
So it's such an honor to have you. And we're all, we all love our own things. We all have our own niches. I have the Rocky Horror family here. And with all y'all. And so yeah, I remember it the same. Disney Channel used to be really kick-ass. And around the same time that Hocus Pocus started first airing on Disney Channel, so did the other cult musical classic, Teen Witch. So that was my introduction to Teen Witch. So Disney Channel really spearheaded what a lot of the Halloween movies and a lot of the cult classics that we've grown to love. Halloween Town, Hocus Pocus, Teen Witch. So I think that was the introduction to a lot of us because I was 3 when the first movie came out, so I missed it. It fell under the radar. But luckily, due to Disney Channel, not only did I discover Hocus Pocus, I discovered one of my other favorite cult musical classics, Teen Witch. And so it was just a cosmic thing. So what we usually do, we talked about our introduction to it our first time. What we usually do is we get into the music. So the music of this film is so important. And there are some that may argue that it's not a musical, that it's not a cult musical classic. Okay, Howard the Duck.
Yeah, you're right. No, I know.
Yeah.
Well, that's because, hashtag drama. I argued that Howard the Duck was not actually a musical, but it is in fact a cult film, and it does have a place in this podcast, and I freaking love Howard the Duck. But this is most definitely a musical.
Absolutely. There's so much music in it.
Mm-hmm.
Music plays such a huge, huge part of it. So let's just go around and talk about the music of this film and why it's so important for this to be such an amazing cult musical classic.
Well, so my friend and I have arguments about we argue the same side of what is a musical. And our kind of definition is, we both have English degrees, so like this counts. If you were to take the music out and it would entirely change the music or the movie. So like we argue that thing you do is a musical because like you can't have it without the music. I'm not going to argue with you on Howard the Duck because it's been a really long time since I saw that. But I think with Hocus Pocus, like the music is kick-ass. Like obviously Bette Midler's in a movie, so she's going to sing. Why wouldn't you? That's like, clearly that needs to happen. Sarah's song is absolutely integral to the plot and is like shockingly sexy and not mad about it. But definitely I think the music keeps it a little lighter too. So it's like, it's technically a kid's movie, even though we all still love it, like Disney adults. But I think that without the music, I think it would have probably been much scarier for kids. So that kind of like levity brings it back to being like, hey, we can play this on the Disney Channel, even though they say virgin 400 times.
Yeah, and I am just joking about the Howard thing because I think I just reinterpreted Howard as that to be a musical. But I agree. I mean, it's weird that this movie is not marketed as a musical. As we talked about, neither is Labyrinth. And think about how integral the music of Labyrinth is. So what do y'all think about not only the music, but this being marketed as a musical?
I mean, if you can make drag numbers out of a movie, it's a musical. I mean, can we all argue that right now? Because like, how dare they not say the Labyrinth is a musical? Who is saying that? No.
And you see how many drag kings do like Jareth numbers? Are you kidding me?
I just saw an entire Rocky Horror where Frank was dressed as Gareth, like, and then everybody else was like in a Manson musical. It was amazing. But
Okay. That also reminds me there is a cast in there's a shadow cast, and they do, I think they occasionally do Rocky, but they do Hocus Pocus as a shadow cast, and they do Labyrinth as a shadow cast. It's actually the thing they're best known for is their Labyrinth shadow cast. They are the Goblin King players. They're based in Michigan. Highly recommend checking them out on TikTok and other social media platforms. They are incredible. But also, I would love to see a Hocus Pocus shadow cast. I know I'm like totally getting off topic, but I feel like some of like the best shadow casts out there usually end up being musicals anyway. So like, I don't know. I just feel like it would just work really well together. I need to see this now. Bucket list item.
What do you mean? But what do you think about the music of the film and why it's so integral as being part of the whole musical genre?
I didn't even consider beforehand with what Ashley mentioned of like the movie would be a lot scarier if it wasn't a musical. Because I remember even watching it with my dad and like the parts where I was getting like emotionally invested. I think it was the scene when they lured the Sanderson sisters into the school. I remember kind of like being on the edge of my seat during that part. And you know, he did basically pull the she doesn't get eaten by the sharks or doesn't get eaten by the eels, essentially, is what my dad pulled on that scene. So I agree with that. But also, it's literally a part of the plot with the witches using music as part of their magic. You know, the spell that they do before they are hung.
Where they're at the gallows.
Exactly. The song at the gallows is what enacts the spell, enchanting the people at the party, Sarah luring the children. Yeah, it's that just kind of blew my mind a little bit right there, just thinking about that reasoning.
And then we'll talk with the three Sanderson sisters and end on that note with the Hocus Pocus aficionado. But the Sanderson sisters, what do y'all feel about the music in the film and it being marketed as a cult musical?
You're muted, babe. You're muted.
Sorry about that. We figured it out. How dare you feel big? Never again. Anyways, it's totally a cult musical. Like there's a whole cult following. I'm sorry for scaring your cat. I have that effect on people apparently. So the I lost topic.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, you ruined it. It's totally got a cult following. Like ask, you know, like 10 people. If you tell, you know, certain people like I hate Hocus Pocus, they're gonna be like, oh, how dare you?
Absolutely.
You know, like, and certain people will be like, what? It's totally a cult movie. Like that's how I judge. Is this a cult movie? Some people are like, huh? And some people are like, oh, I love it. Oh my god.
Yeah. And what do you think about
everybody
music?
knows that siren song and then the dark bardics of the dark bardics. Yes.
What do y'all think about the music? What do y'all think music playing about? What do you think about the music playing such an integral part to this movie?
I feel, in my opinion, if the music wasn't part of the movie, that it would just completely change the whole tone of the movie.
Absolutely.
Like without it, like I mean, that's also what I felt like also draws you into it. Like the music, it's catchy, it's like pulls you in. Like even like that's like they said like you know they use it with their spells. Like I feel like if they didn't have the music involved and it wasn't considered a musical, as they say, it would just be a completely different tone of the whole movie. You wouldn't get the same feeling that you get watching it. Like without the music, it would just be completely different.
Absolutely.
It would just be like your token kiddie horror movie.
Yeah.
Like it
Very
makes it more entertaining.
Music makes everything at least 20% better.
It
Yeah.
does.
At least.
right. And you can't, I'll tell my opinion about that, but it's almost, you cannot separate music from Hocus Pocus. That's what's made it so endearing to fans around the world is the music. Allie, what do you feel about it being a musical and why music is so intricate to this film?
I definitely think it can be in the category of musicals. And I feel like, as we already kind of talked about here, that the two main songs, Sarah's song and I Put a Spell on You, without those songs, they would not be able to lure the children to suck their lives out. And they would not be able to help the parents to stop them from sucking the lives out of their children. So they play very important roles. But David Kirshner, who created Hocus Pocus, actually told us on our podcast that I Put a Spell on You was originally not part of Hocus Pocus until they brought Kenny Ortega in, who was not only the director, but also a choreographer. And having a choreographer says a lot about a film for me. And if they're choreographing a lot of things, I feel like that also leans musical way. So I feel like without that song, it definitely would have been, that scene would have been very lackluster. I don't know what we would have done to halt the parents. So I definitely agree that it could be categorized as a musical. And John Debney, who did all of the rest of the soundtrack itself, even the songs without lyrics are so magical. Sometimes I just listen to it, it puts me in a fall mood. And the fact was able to do that in 3 weeks when the other composer had to leave is amazing. And I think the whole background music along with the two songs, they just really make the film.
Well,
Yeah.
sorry, James.
Go
Go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, like, it's like having John Travolta in a movie and not seeing him dance. Like, you put Bette Midler in a movie, you need her to sing. It's like when Alan Cumming shows up in Burlesque and does no singing or dancing, you're like, what's that about? That's why I hate the movie. Beside the point. But like, why? I know initially it was supposed to be a made for TV movie, but then they got these big names in it, and then they got Kenny Ortega, and like, it just, I will fight those people. Whoever says this isn't a musical, like they've misconstrued what a musical is.
And yeah, Kenny Ortega, of course, he's known for High School Musical now, but he was a really prolific director and choreographer. And if I'm not mistaken, he did Newsies for Disney as well. So I think by having him come in as choreographer, you now have the musical aspect. And so you only have 3 songs, technically, the chant that the Sanderson sisters do in the beginning of the film. I Put a Spell on You, which is, of course, a remake of that old rock classic, and Come Little Children. Now, do you think it would have been beneficial to add another song? Do you think then it would have been marketed more as a musical, y'all? Or do you think that the 3 sort of songs that they have in the film were enough? And I don't know, Allie, if you have any information on if there were going to be any other songs or if that was just the song that they chose to include in the film.
We've never heard of there being another song. And as I said, I Put a Spell on You wasn't even added till later. So originally it was just going to be the chant and Sarah's song, which definitely at that point, I don't know if we would have categorized it as a musical because I feel like I Put a Spell on You is really the one that pushes it over. There's the dancing, there's the performance, there's the singing. And I feel like that's really where it takes the turn.
Yeah, and could y'all imagine the movie without I Put a Spell on You?
No, disgusting. Not disgusting. I probably still would have liked it. But like, I think I Put a Spell on You is it's a musical number in like the traditional sense of thinking about it. So is Gareth's song, but anyway, but like Come Little Children, it's just her, it's kind of dimly lit, there's a lot of décolletage. I love it, but like it's not like a huge choreographed number, but like the spell that they put on Thackeray Binks when they're doing all the nonsense words that aren't nonsense, I wrote them down, but I mean, I think if there was another song, it would have to be another of like those big production numbers. And I don't know that it would have worked because like that one is so I love that it's like that's the song of the movie. I think if there was another one, maybe it would have cheapened it a little bit. I mean, I guess depending upon the type of music it was. But having the Sanderson sisters like break into song for another reason, because like the kids aren't going to break into like they're kind of more grounded in reality, and Billy's not going to like bust out his zombie body and dance and sing. But like I think if you were to add another number, it would have to be them because they're the supernatural aspect of the film.
So yeah, and like some musicals that we've talked about, it's only the fantasy characters that are the ones that are singing. Like in Labyrinth, it's only Jareth and his elf that are singing. Sarah is grounded in reality. She's not the one singing. So that is interesting in terms of if and we always argue if it could have been more, if there could have been more. And I think just because I love musical numbers, it may have distracted from the rest of the film, or it might have taken away. Um, I know we've talked about this via message and things like that, but there was going to be a fourth song, but it was only going to be the theme of the film, which was written by the Swedish band Roxette, who of course wrote the theme for Pretty Woman. It Must Have Been Love, but it's over now, and the song She's Got the Look. But they wrote the song Almost Unreal for this movie, and if you listen to Almost Unreal, which is one of my favorite songs, it's about Hocus Pocus. It says, I love how you do that hocus pocus to me, the way that you look. I mean, it's almost unreal. So it's so unusual that it was written specifically for this movie about these characters, about the mood of this movie, about what these characters go through. And at the very last minute, Disney's like, no, we don't want this theme song. We don't want this to be the theme song for the film. We're going to use it for our Super Mario Brother film, and we know how that turned out. So, what do y'all think about their possibility of there being that fourth song that was cut from the film?
Sorry, the technology of the future eludes me. I was like, when you just said they used that song for the Super Mario Brother movie, I like, first of all, blast from the past. I love Super Mario movie, but that's neither here nor there. But that song really does not fit the superhero movie, like a Super Mario movie at all.
Not at all.
Like, it straight up says Hocus Pocus.
Yes. Yeah.
And I love Roxette as well.
Same.
And I that song is great. I think I've heard it on the radio back, eons ago, with that technology. But I don't know where exactly in the movie that song would fit, except in like a romantic sense. And therein lies where would that
The credits possibly. The credits possibly.
Credits,
Yeah, that's what we
really
were.
the
That's,
only way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
either the
that's what I'm
credits
seeing,
or like
credits.
a romance scene between the
Yeah.
teenagers, and that's something I wouldn't want to see.
Yeah.
Because
I definitely think when you sent it, I was like, oh yeah, the Mario Brothers movie. And I only know that because you told me. But like, I think it would have only fit over the end credits. Like, because the beginning has to be those spooky credits. The romance between the kids is absolutely secondary. So like, they don't theme, but like playing it over the credits like they do with so many like Disney movies, they're like, hey, get a big pop star to sing a song and we put it over the credits. They do it all the time. Why wouldn't they have done it with this? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, Jamie, did you have a chance to listen to that song, and did you have any interpretations of what you think that song would have meant to the film if it was included?
Yeah, I agree. I think it would have been probably played over the credits. I don't want to steal another person's point from it, but I also feel we were robbed from even having that in the credits, to be honest. I feel very robbed. But that's all my thoughts on the matter, to be fair. I listened to it today and I read the lyrics and I'm like, yeah, of course it makes sense for Hocus Pocus. Doy.
Right.
But you know, also like the whole like secondary teen romance, like it's not what I watched this damn movie for anyway.
Oh,
Let's be
not.
real. So I'm like, it's okay if it was a credits song and not sung by anyone else.
And I'm sorry to harp on this, but I want other Hocus Pocus and cult musical fans to listen to the song. And so like the way that like when I post something Hocus Pocus now, I use clips intercut with that song because I feel like it's like the unsung, mysterious missing fourth song from this movie. Allie, did you ever know any information about this song that was supposed to be used in the movie?
So first off, the clip you shared today with the song in the background was the first time that I actually liked the two together. I know that's kind of the differing opinion here because I agree. I feel like the only place it would fit would be the credits. And I actually had the pleasure of seeing Hocus Pocus in the theaters today because it is back for the 30th anniversary. And it was the first time I ever saw it. And I closely paid attention that they put I Put a Spell on You, Bette Midler's version, over the credits, which lovely, but we just heard that about 30 minutes ago. So I wouldn't be totally offended if that song was in the credits, but I feel like, as I said, that's really the only place I feel like it would fit in this film. But since it was particularly made for it, it is kind of sad that it didn't finally make it in, and where it landed doesn't fit either.
Because apparently, I'm not up to date with this particular group, but apparently the 90s group In Vogue was supposed to do some sort of song. But then, I mean, they had already commissioned Roxette to write the song Almost Unreal. Um, so I don't know. Now I always eternally tie that song to Hocus Pocus. And now, like, I think if you listen to it, I think it'd have been really kick ass and really badass to like have Roxette do a song for Hocus Pocus. But yeah, the music is so integral to this movie. I don't know if we would be sitting here discussing it to the degree that we are if it wasn't a musical. Because, I mean, like other cult musical classics that we look at, music plays such an important role in this movie. Music plays such an important role in this movie. I mean, it's sort of like what Ashley said about you're not going to have a movie with John Travolta unless he dances. I mean, Bette Midler, of course, had them put in a musical number in the First Wives Club because she's like, if I'm going to do a movie, I'm going to sing. And like, there's like a clause, I guess, sometimes in her contract that she wants to sing or whatever, but that doesn't matter because this music and these characters take on a life of their own. And I think music is just plays such an important. And what a lot of people don't know, I'm sure you know, Allie, is that Sarah Jessica Parker is a trained classical, theater kid. She was an Annie. She was one of the original Annies on Broadway. And so it allowed her to have to showcase her talents because we really don't see Sarah Jessica sing in many other projects. And we don't see Sarah Jessica dance in many other projects. I mean, of course, we've seen her in the cult musical classic Girls Just Want to Have Fun. But for her to be able to do this, shortly after this, it was like 5 years after this, she was eternally tied to Sex and the City and then subsequent other movies and TV shows. But I think for her, it had to been for her to do Sarah and to do Sarah's song and I Put a Spell on You and all the music that's in this film, all the musical sequences, it must have been like a return to form for her, and she must have been so pleased and so happy that she got to perform because she was a theater kid. So what do y'all think about that?
I'm glad she got to sing again in Hocus Pocus too, a little bit. She got to like kind of step into those shoes again, like not just in the sense of playing Sarah, but also getting to sing and tap into the musical side of her again.
And she's talented. She really is talented. And she's basically a cappella when she's doing Come Little Children. And her voice is beautiful. It's so beautiful. So we've talked about the music in this particular film, and we've talked about our introduction. Now, this is a really interesting question, but I digress. Can you imagine? I mean, it wasn't that long ago, but do you remember a time when Hocus Pocus wasn't this iconic global sensation that is so part of the American fabric of our culture that it's almost impossible to think about it not being a cult musical classic, but also just being part of our consciousness? But do you remember the time when that's a Michael Jackson song? Do you remember the time when Hocus Pocus was just a blip on the radar? And anybody can talk about it because it wasn't that long.
Yeah. It was, so I was born in 85. So like I lived in a very small town in Florida. So like there was a time when I was the one introducing people to Hocus Pocus. They were like, what is this movie? And I'm like, oh my God. But of course, that was around the same time that Nightmare Before Christmas wasn't a big deal until like Hot Topic became a thing. And then I remember the Disney World, changed like their Halloween show and they put Hocus Pocus in there. And it was like, for me, that's when I started seeing more people talking about it. Like I still had like my weird little theater friends, but like other than that, like it was basically forgotten because didn't it come out in like June, the year that it came out or something? Because I think Nightmare came out in October and they were like, we can't have two Halloween movies. I was like, yes, you can. All the Halloween movies. But of course, they just did the same thing with Haunted Mansion. They just want to get the merch out. But I definitely remember a large portion of my life being like, why don't people love Hocus Pocus?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. How about the rest of y'all? Do y'all remember before Hocus Pocus became this global? I wouldn't even say global. It's becoming that way now, but it was such an American treasure to where everybody loved this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember hearing too much about Hocus Pocus until I got to college, when I went to see the drag show. I think that with like, um, no, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But I do remember around when Disney added Hocus Pocus to their Halloween festivities. And I remember finding out about this through a post on Twitter, actually, where a Disney vlogger I used to follow said, "Who wants to bet that in the next few years they're going to order Hocus Pocus 2? Who wants to bet that like this is just testing grounds for a Hocus Pocus sequel?" And I've kept that in my head for years until finally they confirmed that Hocus Pocus 2 was happening. And even though I wasn't the one that said that initially, I do remember being like, just feeling very vindicated by that. But I think seeing that Disney show was a huge turning point for me, because Hocus Pocus I knew mostly like with my, weird theater kid friends and, my gay friends, and going to the gay bars with the drag queens who impersonate them every year. I thought it was just that, mostly that circle, but then seeing that mainstream, appeal and a theme park, that's when I started noticing, oh, okay, this is becoming a bigger thing. And then seeing all the Hocus Pocus merchandise starting to come out.
I definitely remember a time it was not a thing at all. As I believe Ashley said, it came out in July and that it flopped. It's known as a flop. It did not do well originally. And there was a big gap in time until they started really airing it on what now is Freeform, formerly ABC Family, where people didn't really know it existed. And then around the 20th anniversary, the cast did get together out in Burbank at one of the studios and did a live watch along. And the cast was being spotted by some like diehard fans, and they didn't even realize what was going on, that it was getting a resurgence at that time. And then 2016, 2017, the show came to Disney. And then 2018 is when they did the big 25th anniversary bash that was shown on Freeform. And I think that is what really gave it the big burst of getting people back involved, getting people to wanting the sequel, and reminding people that it did exist. And in terms of merchandise, as we were just talking about, there was nothing for a really long time. I think Disney did their first drop in like 2012. It was a few t-shirts, and it was so limited that you couldn't get them. And by the time 2016, 2018 came around, there's so much merchandise everywhere. You can find it at TJ Maxx, you can find it at Spirit Halloween, eBay, everywhere. It's really around every corner now, starting almost to morph into the level of Night Before Christmas.
And that's exactly right. And Sanderson sisters, I'm going to call y'all that forever. Do y'all remember a time where before Hocus Pocus became this American iconic part of our culture?
The time before it became that, yeah. It was kind of like I remember seeing it on the Disney Channel, and then it kind of, it was run with like the Halloween stuff. Yeah, it's not at first, but I know I definitely enjoyed it. Like it caught my interest even before it was, super popular. So it was kind of like on the Halloween list.
It was completely off my radar before it got like super popular recently. So I am not the hipster here.
I mean, for me personally, it was always popular. Like I said, I had it on a VHS. I would watch it all the time to the point where my tape broke. So, but then it's like, then you go like from not knowing anything about it, like around the area or like anywhere. And then all of a sudden it's like one day I just was like, boom, I'm like, whoa, I'm like, everyone's like, Hocus Pocus this, Hocus Pocus that, Sanderson sisters this, Sanderson sisters that.
Merchandise.
Merch, exactly.
Merchandise,
Out of nowhere, I'm like, when did it just all of a sudden it just exploded? I mean, I'm not complaining. I love every second of it, because it deserves it, and it's such a great film and such a great cult musical, even though people still argue that.
Yeah, as was said before, it was like 2018 was like or 2016 was the 25th anniversary of it. And like, I think that's when it became like on my radar, is when the anniversary thing came out.
And I think, you know, a lot of us harken back to seeing it on Disney Channel. And I think the reason it was on Disney Channel is because Disney owned it and they didn't have to worry about getting rights. And Disney had bought MGM, of course, which owned Teen Witch. So I think Disney was just being economical by showing these movies on Disney Channel, you know? And then I think little did they know that it would become this American iconic movie to where everybody loves Hocus Pocus. Everybody loves Hocus Pocus. And I like to compare the birth of the cult fandom of Hocus Pocus to Rocky Horror, since we have a lot of Rocky Horror stands here, and Labyrinth. Because if you think about it, Hocus Pocus and Labyrinth and Rocky Horror, um, sorry, one second, are their success was not um, box office success when we in our eyes, because Labyrinth, Hocus Pocus, and the Rocky Horror Picture Show were all technically flops, but it's successful because people refuse to let that movie go, and people are really fans are really the ones that own that movie. They own the dialogue, they own the costumes, they own the fandom, they own their special relationship to the music and the characters, and it forced, you know, studios like Disney and 20th Century Fox, who owned Rocky Horror at the time, to re-examine the film's popularity and success and actually do something in terms of merchandise and different tie-in media, etc. So I think Hocus Pocus, since we have a lot of Rocky Horror Shadowcast here, I think Hocus Pocus is really similar to Rocky Horror in that Rocky Horror came and went and it disappeared. And it was the fans and it was the cult behind Rocky Horror that made it what it is today. And I think it's the same thing with Hocus Pocus. We grew up with it. We had repeat airings every year on Halloween, and we showed it to the next generation, the next generation. And people like Rocky Horror and other cult musicals, people are really invested in Hocus Pocus. Obviously, we have the podcaster here from the Hocus Pocus podcast. People are really, really invested in this movie. And I think once people have a cult behind it, like Rocky Horror and Labyrinth and Hocus Pocus, that's when a studio can either continue to choose to ignore it or actually give it just due. And I think that's what's happened with Hocus Pocus. It's the fans have kept this movie alive. Because I know you guys can remember this. It wasn't that long ago before there were no Hocus Pocus official Halloween costumes. Everybody had to make their own. And I remember like I was gonna be Sarah one year. And I was like looking on YouTube of how to make or like how to put together a Sarah Sanderson costume. I mean, it's like Rocky Horror. If you look at old Rocky Horror documentaries, how long ago? I mean, how long did it take before there to be Rocky Horror official Riff Raff, Magenta, and Columbia and Frank costumes? I mean, so and Labyrinth Halloween costumes. There's now Jareth costumes. So it's the fandom that's kept it alive. And so, what do y'all think about that being that the reason that it has become successful now is not because some studio just rediscovered it, but it's because of the cult fans that have kept this movie what it is?
I'm going to say this really quick because I do have to leave at 9:15. I'm sorry. I love everybody. Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, the show. There is a song called Friendtopia, and the last verse in the song is, "We nostalgically watch Hocus Pocus." And there's a whole, and it's like, everyone will watch it or we kill them. Like, it's a whole like big chunk of this song. And I remember being like, yeah, that's what girlfriendships are like. But like, there's a book called Hocus Pocus in Focus. I read that and I loved like learning about all of the like behind the scenes kind of stuff and how Billy was supposed to be sexy. And I mean, it's exactly the same as Rocky Horror, because if it weren't for weirdos like us, like it would have just died in the theater. And then somebody like James would have found it randomly when he created cult musicals. And then he would have introduced us all to it. But absolutely, like even when we dressed up, me and my friends pre-COVID, you know, we had to make our own costumes, but we dressed up as all the kids. But like even then, they didn't have costumes. Like we made Black Flame Candle. We made, hold on, the book. Like, oh, she made the book. she be me, being me. But like, I made all the spells, I did all the things, and there are lights in the back, so it lights up. But like, this didn't exist when Disney decided to put them, and then it's just like, ta-da! So I think we should all give ourselves little pats on the back because
We should
we
give
this happened.
we should give ourselves our flowers,
Yes.
as the young generation said. Yeah, and it's like it shows the investment that fans went into. I mean, people. I remember watching like the shock treatment documentary, and people and like the costumes were Rocky Horror. You can tell people made those costumes, and it's still like in different countries that don't have access to the Rocky Horror Picture Show costumes. It's like the amount of love that went into making this Hocus Pocus spell book and the black flame candle and the costumes. It's just like people fans are more in love with this film than the studios are. And it's always been that way. It's the fans that have kept this alive. All a Teen Witch. Very much like Teen Witch. But I love that. And thank you so much for being here. You're a gem. You're a star. Gem, you're a gem. Truly outrageous. But what do y'all think about that in terms of fans being the one that have kept us alive?
And if hopefully I didn't interrupt anyone if they were going to talk. For me, like seeing the way I saw the fandom was primarily through, I'm going to keep bringing up the drag queens, but like they made their own costumes and made their like, you know, commissioned people to make their wigs. I remember my friend Robin, who's Robin Hart's Love, who's pretty well known in my area for impersonating Winifred Sanderson. She even went on the local news in character too. Like she got the teeth like made from someone on Etsy. Like now like Sanderson sisters are like these drag queens are being hired now like to travel all around the tri-state area to perform at these parties and you know different like benefits and things like that. It's just incredible. And yeah, for me like it was just seeing it through a very queer lens of like just embracing the rock camp that is Hocus Pocus. You know, even watching like I remember I was watching Hocus Pocus the other day to prepare for this, and because I've seen them do the same number for years before the new Hocus Pocus movie came out, I was impressed by the fact that Robin managed to get like the movements that Winifred does during all like it's been 300 years right down to the day, like perfect wrist movement impersonation. It is very similar to Rocky Horror in that regard too, because now in a shadow cast we impersonate like the specific way that Frank puts his hand up and you know things like that. It's yeah, it's I will say that it's particularly interesting to see the how the queer fandom has had a huge part in making these cult movies what they are today, like Rocky, like Labyrinth, like Hocus Pocus. And I had one more thing I was going to say about it. Oh, and I also really loved the tribute they did to the drag queens who've helped make Hocus Pocus what it is today by having people like Cornbread and Ginger Minge impersonating the sisters in the movie. I thought that was a really, really nice touch. So,
And a lot of
about drag queens.
yeah, well, a lot of us here are part of the queer community, and that happens with a lot of cult classics that the queer community and teenage girls and millennials we resurrect things that people forget. I mean, I always use this as an example, and I told y'all to stop me. Showgirls. It's the gay community that has resurrected showgirls. Before, the gay community resurrected showgirls. I mean, you ask a lot of gay men, and they're like, show isn't a bad movie. It's just mainstream culture that has discarded that movie. And the same thing with Teen Witch, Focus, and several other cult musical classics. It has been the weirdos and the queers and the creeps that have kept this movie alive in the consciousness. Like, even if Disney wakes up one and decides, oh, Hocus Pocus is we've done it, it's still going to be alive in the fan, and we're not going to let it go. And I think even if we're given so much merchandise, even if we're given so much merchandise, up-teen sequels and up-teen spin-offs, Hocus Pocus remains really, really important to people.
I think the fandom is what makes it special in a lot of ways, where even the cast who made it to each crew have said that without the fandom, they don't think they're good at a sequel. So I think it's important in a lot of ways. And I think the kids who are will be growing up with one, two, they have it made in a lot of ways because they get to just watch them back to back. They don't know a world without it. But I think we all who grew up with just one have a special journey of how we almost had to fight for it in a way. We almost had to advocate for a movie, and we got it there. So I think that makes it really special, and it is because of the fandom and the people who stood behind it for 30 years.
And that the cult that follows Hocus Pocus, it's so beloved. But even I'm sure as you know, Allie, like you and your co-host, you have a special relationship to Hocus Pocus, to where I believe that you could be part of the tribe of the small little cult. I mean, Hocus Pocus is such a global phenomenon, but I feel like beneath that, there is a cult that followed it before it was a global phenomenon. And you guys see it differently than just, oh, everybody loves Hocus Pocus.
I agree. I think being kind of earlier OGs of it and loving it from the start and not letting it go, not having a gap in time where we were like, oh, we kind of forgot about it. We always had it with us. And just to show how I feel like fans connect over it in really special ways. I wouldn't have met Will, who I host the podcast with, without Hocus Pocus. I ended up officiating his wedding. We've become so close to his husband. And it just, without it, I feel like I would be missing a whole group of friends and not being able to talk to you guys and meeting new people over it. It's just opened a whole new world. And I feel like that's just because the fans, we all understand each other. You don't really need, if you like Hocus Pocus, we'll get along. You don't really need to go further than that.
Yeah, and cult musicals have a way of connecting everybody. I would have never met all these wonderful, fabulous freaks if it wasn't for Rocky Horror and Shock Treatment and Best Little Whorehouse. And it's just cult musicals specifically. Music is so important to people anyway. And if you have a musical that's forgotten or weird, it's not The Sound of Music or Grace. But if you have Grace 2, and you've got Shock Treatment, and you've got Rocky Horror, and you've got Best Little Whorehouse and Hocus Pocus, there's something about those musicals that it's almost like a church service when people watch these movies and participate in these. I've never, this is going to shake everybody. I cannot tell you when I've ever been to a Rocky Horror Shadowcast, but I know.
You've got a virgin.
Virgin. Where's your lipstick? I'm right on your forehead.
It's time to light the black flame
Light the
candle.
Black flame candle. Set us free.
I love it. But I know the importance, and I know especially for you all, because you guys are so invested in cult musicals, and not just Rocky Horror, but Shock Treatment and Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog, which I know y'all love, and Little Shop of Horror and Reefer.
Yes.
It's with the music and the callbacks and the costumes and the dress. It's almost like a church service. To be honest, it's because you have community and you have singing and you have dance. This might be a far reach, but I feel like that's the closest thing to a divine experience, no pun intended, Bette Midler, the divine experience that a lot of people will come to and get close to. I think it's not a cult in terms of, it's a cult in terms of a community. And Hocus Pocus fits right in there with Labyrinth and Rocky Horror. And do y'all agree in terms that the community and the callbacks and the singing of songs, including Hocus Pocus, is sort of like a religious experience?
It absolutely
absolutely,
is.
yeah.
It's joy.
Absolutely.
Joy is divinity. And
Yeah.
everyone's so
Yep.
joyful. You know what I
Agreed.
mean?
Like every time I know, like we do our shows, like I could be having the worst absolute week of my entire life, worst absolute day of my entire life.
Witness this.
I'll show up to one of the shows and I become a different person. Like, and I've even explained that before. Like you said, it's kind of like going to a church service. I'm like, I feel like that's when I can go and just release all that negative energy into the air and it just be gone. And I literally walk out of there so light and so free, no matter what show we put on. It's just, I love it. Like, it's just,
Preach.
it's like, it's euphoric, I think is the way to describe it. It's like a euphoric experience.
Absolutely. Every time I go to Rocky Horror, like as Randy said, yeah, it's so like euphoric. Like you get to feel the joy of like all of the other people in the room with you. And you can feel people's sorrows melt away because someone just waved a fucking ding dong in your face. Excuse my French, but that's what happens at Rocky. Okay,
It's
funny,
true.
ridiculous things that you will not expect happen. And like when I watch Hocus Pocus, like you pick up on little things that just bring you joy too. Like for example, like when like Winifred slaps, you know, wet, 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 1, 2, 3, like she moves her mouth with it, you know, like huh, like that. It's hilarious.
Absolutely.
And like everyone laughs at that part because it's just it's all together now, you know, like joy, hilarity, and just having a good time. It's totally like a religious experience.
Yeah, bringing people together in a moment of joy is.
We do not hear you anymore.
Oh no.
I think
There.
these movies, these cult musicals are so much more important to people than just simply a movie that you put on and sing along with at home. You can do that, but I think it's an experience for all. And I would love for Hocus Pocus, and I'll ask this when it comes time to the legacy. I would love to see Hocus Pocus, some of the power of Hocus Pocus revert back to the hands of the fans versus Disney.
Yes.
What do you think about that, y'all? About the power of Hocus Pocus reverting back to the fans who are so protective of it?
I'm ready to shadow cast it right now.
Yeah, I know. We're ready.
We're ready. Yeah.
We need a Billy. Let's go. Come on, Jamie. Come on over. Let's do it right
I'm
now.
not.
So
I'm
down.
only-
Just tell me when and where to be there.
All right, I'm Binks. Let's go.
Let's do this. We're gonna do this. If it's never been done, we're gonna be the first ones to do it right here, right now.
The Goblin King players, the Goblin
you did
King
say that. I
players, they do
apologize.
Shadowcast every year, but it's still really cool that they do that, and I really want to make a trip out to see them. I do know that TNP in Philadelphia do have a Hocus Pocus pre-show, and I believe RKO Army also has a Hocus Pocus pre-show. So it goes with your earlier point that the Rocky and Hocus Pocus community is just a fucking circle. Let's be real here.
They all intertwine with one another.
Exactly. We might do
And
a
I
Hocus
love it.
Pocus pre-show.
Yeah, now we want to do it now. We want to do a pre-shows as brothers and sisters.
Now,
We even said
Alex,
maybe tonight we'll film a TikTok.
oh my God, you guys have to. You are the Sanderson sisters incarnate. Allie, what do you think of being such a fan of, I guess, a protector of the Black Flame Candle? What do you feel about Disney finally giving it recognition at the parks? You know, tie-ins with the sequel book, and then of course the sequel movie. What do you think about the fans, sort of the power of this movie reverting back to the fans in terms of? Do you think it will ever be a time where Disney will still let it have its cult sort of feel to it, but still let it be commercialized?
I think they have to find that happy medium in order to make the masses happy. The sequel was good, and I think that nothing will ever live up to the first one, but it wasn't bad, which we were very happy with because we had heard some storylines over the year that would not have been so good. So we are happy with it, but I think that the way it got there, as we already talked about, is because of the fans. And I think if they took more feedback from the fans, especially since Hocus Pocus 3 has been confirmed by Disney executives, that if they were to kind of do a poll, do a showing, do something to discuss with the fans what we're looking for, not even just in terms of the movie, but in terms of the merchandise, in terms of marketing, in terms of what we think would get more people into the center of the cult. And I think that would be important. And also, while we're talking about musicals, I don't know if you guys are aware, but David Kirshner, who created Hocus Pocus, has been in talks with doing a Broadway musical version of Hocus Pocus. And that was supposed to be pre-COVID. It was put on hold, but we are hearing some rumblings that it might be coming back. So that would be incredible. And the fans, I at least as a fan, would love to see it on Broadway.
Now, I've heard. I thought it was dead. I thought it was in development hell. So I'm excited to hear that. Before we move on, if you don't mind me asking, what other ideas did they have for a sequel before it landed on what we got?
I don't know how much I can actually disclose of that. I apologize. There were definitely a lot of different ways that it could have gone. We hear from people who went to the screening of the final version back in May of 2022 that the ending was very different. They had asked the crowd who liked the ending, and not a single person raised their hand. So that shows fan feedback direct, where they did a focus group and it was not a happy situation. So they did go back and do reshoots to get the ending we do have for Hocus Pocus 2. So I think that's a showing direct of how fans can impact a movie. And I would love to see that original version to feel the anger that I'm sure those people felt in that theater that day.
Yeah, and hopefully the third film, it's not made just for shits and giggles, and it's not just made because it's another, you know, massive success for Disney Plus. Hopefully it's made to conclude the story, because for me, I love the darkness of Hocus Pocus. That's why I love The Nightmare Before Christmas, and I'm really glad that the cult musical fans kept The Nightmare Before Christmas alive. I would hope that Hocus Pocus 3 would return to the darker roots of Hocus Pocus. But I think the times have changed and the world's changed, and I think what could have been done and what's popular then. I mean, we all talk about this now. We've talked about this before. It's almost impossible to find movies that have good villains in them, because I think times are different now, and people are so depressed and people are so just exhausted and exacerbated with the world, that I think people have to have goodness now, and it's not necessarily a bad thing.
I think that's why a lot of people are nervous about 3, where, as you said, we want it to have a nice wrapped up ending. And agree or disagree with how HP2 ended, it did wrap up nicely where they're gone. They had their sisterly moment. It was beautiful. Some people agree with what Winifred did, some might not. But at the end of the day, it was very wrapped up. And so to hear that there is a 3 in development, I think it scares off a lot of people, because I don't want it, as you said, I don't want it for a money grab. I don't want it just done to be done. I want good Hocus Pocus. So if they're going to do a spinoff, sequel with the young Sanderson sisters, there's a lot of ways they can go. And I think just hearing that there is a 3 is sort of scary, but we do have to put it in their trusted hands and hope that they do call upon the fans if they need us.
And I'm sure they will. I mean, look at the drag queens that were in the film. Look at the fans that were in the film. I mean, look at the little nods they did to Penny Marshall. I mean, there's so many things. They did it with love, but I hope it harkens back to the Hocus Pocus that we love, because I like the darker aspects. I like villains. I've always gravitated towards villains. And hopefully, Night Before Christmas gets the same just due eventually. But I think it's got Tim Burton, which is holding it a little bit back. So I guess we wrapped up on the legacy. Before we close off, this movie is so quotable, and it's one of those movies, like my cousin, her favorite movie is Teen Witch, so she's always sitting there doing the laundry quoting Teen Witch. What is your favorite 1 or 2 quotes from this movie, as hard as it is?
What was your question again? I just want to make sure I.
Your favorite quotes from this film?
What a question. It's like asking me about my favorite children. Am I allowed to say 2?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's one that I really want to get that coffee cup that says this, and you know exactly what line I'm going to say. Oh, look, another glorious morning makes me sick. That's definitely one. And then my favorite one that I would say it a lot after I was done coaching. I used to coach little kids, and they would drive me up the wall. Loved them to pieces, but they were also pains in my ass. So I would turn to my roommate and just be like, "I've always wanted a child, and now I think I shall have one." Toast! Like just that. Those 2 are just off the top of my head. Winifred is she's my favorite for a reason. I think I'm just gonna grow up to become her one day.
Sanderson sisters?
I think one of my favorite ones has already been said, that what a glorious morning makes me sick. It's so good, just the way she says sick. Anything Bette Midler says is just amazing, and I love Bette Midler in this one so much.
One of my favorite quotes is not from the Sanderson sisters, but it cracks me up every single time. it appears on the screen when they're talking, is the part where Thora Birch is like, "What do you call them, Max? Yabos?
Yeah.
Max loves your yabos."
Yeah.
That cracks me up to no end.
The child had some of the best lines.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And of course, amok, amok, amok.
Yeah. Everybody's
I
stealing
gotta
all my
stick to the
favorite
Sarah.
ones. Everybody stole all mine. But I gotta say, I know Yabos like became a thing, at least in upstate New York where I grew up.
Billy's
Like,
rant.
that became a thing, I'm pretty sure, because of that movie, right?
Yeah,
I'm
I've
pretty
heard
sure.
it else. I've heard it as Yabos before from Western New York, Yeehaw, New York. Yes, it was
Yeah.
definitely Yabos then.
Yabos.
And I think that hasn't been said yet. Had to be like when Billy just goes off, wench, you know, and,
Yes.
and so on.
Everybody
Billy's
And
Billy
so on.
Brandt.
And like I just want to commend. I love the actor dearly. And just the fact that he had live moths and dirt in his mouth.
That was
I know.
unbelievable. Oh my God.
My
That's
God.
dedication
I can't
to
take
your
that.
role.
Doug Jones. I love
That
him.
is, that is dedication to a role without a doubt.
Allie, and before we get to Allie, I wanted to say about Danny. She goes, "I'm Allison. Kiss me."
Allison, yes.
Allie.
So I have two. One was actually going to be the wench trollop, you bucktooth mop riding firefly from hell.
We all stole everybody.
When we actually talked with Doug, the original script, he was just supposed to look at Bette Midler and call her a bitch. And he was like, "I will not do such a thing to Bette Midler. There is no chance." So he actually came up with that line and wrote it and gave it production and was like, "We do this instead." So it's iconic. And I would say my second is actually towards the end of the film where Human Thackeray says to Danny, "I shall always be with you." Makes me cry every time, no matter how many times I've seen that movie, because they have such a beautiful bond, such a great story, and he will always be with her. So it's a beautiful moment.
My three favorite. I know it's only two, but two of my favorites come from Sarah, who's my spirit animal. I love how she goes, "Nice," and then because she knows what's important, boys. And then she goes, "Hang them on a hook and let me play with them." I love it. And then I love when they're going to go see Penny Marshall and of course Gary Marshall, and then she goes, "He has a little woman." I love that too. This movie is so quotable. It's like I love Sarah because like when I look, and so when I'm down the road and under my breath, I don't say it out loud because I'm not a creep. But sometimes when I say like I see a group of guys under my breath, I'm like, "Guys." It's
I also
Can I
do
take
love when perfect. I also do love it's not much of a line as it is just a part in the movie with the little girl just like an angel. She goes up to them, she's like, "Bless you," and the girls just start like all the witches start screaming. That's a mood and a half. That's a mood and a half right there. Like,
oh
I love
Lord.
it. It's the best.
So before we close out on this special episode, do y'all have just anything that you would hope Hocus Pocus continues to be?
What did he say?
It broke. No, it broke up.
Oh,
I couldn't hear.
what do you want Hocus Pocus to continue to be?
Oh, I'm a little bent that the sequel was mediocre at best, and yeah,
I mean, I agree. I wish the sequel was a little bit more, but there's talks of a third one in the mix. Maybe it will redeem it, maybe, it's like Anakin
Fingers crossed.
Skywalker. Maybe there's a moment.
I know that the fans are clearly very turned about it. So
Mm-hmm.
if they are gonna give it another shot, they better not f it up.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that this film continues to be not only for us, we're kind of stingy as cult fans. It's kind of like we're bipolar in terms of we don't want a studio to rake it dry, and at the same time, we do want merchandise. We do want we do Hocus Pocus tarot cards. We do want costumes. We do want dolls. We do want.
I do want Hocus Pocus tarot
But
cards.
at the same time, we don't want a movie to have 18 sequels, 18
Exactly.
spin-offs. We
Don't
want something
taint
sacred.
it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that the fans, and I'm glad that Disney has reevaluated Hocus Pocus and has given us a sequel and a sequel book, which is completely different than the sequel movie. And then toys and costumes and the Sanderson sisters at Disney. I hope that instead of it, and like Ali said, Hocus Pocus is becoming a thing in the UK just this year. They're now having screenings over here with it. And it's like they always say what happens in America always happens in UK. So I'm hoping that our love of this movie spreads globally. And so it won't just be, I mean, because Bette Midler, and I'm sure you've heard this, Allie, Bette Midler has equated Hocus Pocus and its fandom and its how well loved it is to really Halloween becoming an original American holiday. Because we might do a lot of things crazy in the States, but nobody does Halloween like America.
At least
And
we
it's
got that going on.
Yeah.
and I think, Hocus Hocus Pocus might have been, at the beginning of when we really, really started doing Halloween big. And that's what Miller always equates with Halloween, it is today with Hocus Pocus. And do y'all have anything else that y'all want this movie to continue to be, or you want it to be?
I just want it to be a holiday tradition. I think it belongs up there with a lot of the traditional Christmas movies like Charlie Brown and things like that. I wanted that to be like the sacred part, rite of passage of Halloween.
I
You've got to
think
watch Hocus Pocus, which it has been.
Brilliant.
I just want to keep it that way. Just keep it that way, please. That's all I want.
Yes. Agreed.
And then we'll argue on that episode whether The Nightmare Before Christmas is a Halloween movie or a Christmas movie. I argue it's a Christmas movie, so
The answer is yes.
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 Exactly. Yes.
and
James
Allie,
can fight us, guys.
A movie can exist in duality and it is beautiful.
exactly.
Only Sith feel an absolute.
Yeah, only Sith
That's-
feel in absolutes.
That's why I always watch Batman and Batman Returns and Batman Forever and Batman and Robin at Christmas.
Fair.
I'm with you.
Or Die Hard. It's a Christmas movie.
Die Hard.
So before I get to Allie, so is the best little whorehouse in Texas because it takes place at Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a Christmas movie. Allie, what do you hope this movie continues to be?
As everyone was just saying, I really hope that it continues to be that cornerstone of Halloween where when it's October 1st, people watch it to start off the season. When it's October 31st, people watch it to end the season of it. And I hope that it continues to be important. I hope people rediscover it, to love it, who may have fallen out when it had that gap of time. I hope the new generation discovers not only the sequel, but the original and love it for what it is. Because in a lot of ways, even though obviously they talk about daylight savings time, they talk about there's not cell phones, there's clearly a gap in time. But when you watch it, if you don't pay attention to those integral details, it is timeless. So I hope people just continue to rediscover it, and realize how important it is to not only Halloween, but all year round.
I agree. And this movie is just part of our culture, and everybody loves it now. Everybody loves Hocus Pocus. I mean, I've looked at the statistics. Even though you can watch it on Disney Plus and you can buy the Blu-ray and the DVD, people still watch it on TV, and it breaks records every year for cable television on the Disney Channel.
Good.
As it should.
People are invested in this. But I will leave y'all, and thank y'all so much for being part of this. And next time you see a hot group, a gaggle of men walking around on the street, go, boys.
Boys. I'm gonna do that from now on. Actually, I'm gonna dress like this every day and be like, boys.